A lot of people still getting up to speed on Jassy. They feel like they might know Bezos obviously a lot better. What do you tell them right now?
Well, AWS didn't exist. Jassy ran AWS, the cloud computing version of Amazon, and it didn't exist in 2006, and now it's worth a $50 billion business. It's a $50 billion a year business, and Andy led the charge all the way. So clearly, he's got something to offer.
You've said you've worked in tech for 4 decades, and that AWS, by a wide margin, was the best place, the best managed place that you'd ever worked, even in places where you'd been CEO.
That's correct. It was a great place to work. They were outstandingly successful at building a good team, a strong team that drove forward, that had a very low density of problem people. It was just a nice place to get up and go into every morning. That was when we could still get up and go into work.
Yeah, it's been a while. We're going to get back there eventually. I want to read you what Needham wrote this morning in their note about the quarter and the succession. We expect the new management structure to be positive for shareholders. We think Jassy will be less likely than Bezos, they say, to make huge, risky bets. But Bezos on the board represents a safety net if something goes wrong. I wonder if you think that's directionally correct, the idea that Jassy is somehow more risk averse.
I'm going to have to disagree with that. I've been in the room with Andy Jassy when we've done a large, elaborate presentation about our plans for the coming year. He'd say, sounds smart. Are you being aggressive enough? Are you going fast enough? If I gave you twice that much, what could you do? So I think Andy Jassy is a very aggressive guy.
Tim, I wonder what you think. I mean, certainly Bezos is stepping aside from that CEO role at quite a high note. I mean, just look at $125 billion in revenue was reported yesterday. But it's also at a very tenuous time for Amazon, as it has gotten so large and it does have such a dominant position in so many different industries at this point in time. I wonder what you think that'll mean in terms of the task ahead for Jassy navigating some of those regulatory, investigations and some of that, more broadly, some of that scrutiny.
Well, Andy's got a promotion, and his job now includes testifying to Congress. So good luck with that. And let's be honest, as recently as 10 years ago, the big tech companies were sort of looked up to, and their CEOs were kind of regarded as heroes. And over the last few years, that's changed. And there's, a lot of disaffection out there with big tech in general, and to be honest, Amazon in particular. And while, Jeff has built this thing from nothing to a $1.7 trillion valuation, he's also part of that story of big tech becoming less and less popular. So, there's two sides to that legacy. Andy's a smart guy. He's a good leader. I suspect he'll do well, but let's not claim it's going to be an easy job.
Next steps for Bezos specifically. I mean, certainly he has a lot of other initiatives underway that he'll be setting his sights on and focusing his attention on. He has said, though, that the space stuff, Blue Origin, is the most important work that I'm doing. If you had to break it down, knowing him, having worked with him in the past, how much of his time do you think will be dedicated to things like those space endeavors?
Well, if this has taught us anything the last few years, it's that Jeff is an unpredictable guy. So I'm not going to try and predict how he's going to allocate his time. I do notice, however, that his ex-wife is proving far more effective than he has been at giving money away and doing good things with it. So I think Jeff could kind of try and up his game on that front.
Yeah, actually, that's interesting you mentioned that. I mean, he has started to at least give some money away, particularly in terms of things like the environment. Do you think that he will? Is there any expectation that he'll move more towards a Gates model in the future in terms of creating some sort of overarching philanthropy?
Well, I would certainly hope so. And he's a smart guy. I'm optimistic. He made some very progressive remarks and moves on the climate emergency. And, one thing I would like to see is I would like to see Jeff throw a certain amount of his leadership skill and a lot of his money at climate change issues, because he's the kind of guy who might be able to help move the needle on that.
Yeah, well, he has started to. At least that is kind of where some of his money that he has given away is focused. I wonder about Blue Origin, what your expectations are there, because he's been trailing, we call them rivals. He's been trailing Elon Musk, not just in the net worth category, but obviously SpaceX has had great success. Do you anticipate that's where he's going to spend the bulk of his time?
Well, like I said, that's not a prediction I'm going to make. However, I'm going to say in terms of the impact upon the economy, upon society, on the planet we live in, I just don't think space is that big a deal. So as I said, I'd be happier if he'd put more of his energy into the climate emergency, because, Amazon's a pretty big part of the climate emergency. So that's another part of his legacy that maybe he could, look better in the rear view.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.